Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new video. It still feels a bit weird to say, but a new edition of Warhammer 40k is only a few months away, and we know it's going to change a lot of things from the current game. In a sentence, the rules are getting streamlined, something many of us can appreciate given how clunky a lot of the recent releases and FAQs have been. All of the core rules and initial faction rules will also be free at launch, meaning players can get stuck in straight away, and that the existing 9th edition codexes will be retired, and that means every army is going to feel at least a little different on day one. So given how much is going to change over the next few months, I wanted to dedicate this video to talking about how we can prepare for that new 10th edition of Warhammer 40k and make the most of the time between now and when it launches. If you're interested in hearing about that, then let's jump right in. One of the things I've been doing quite a bit of lately is reflecting on my 9th edition games and thinking about which armies I've most enjoyed playing with. I play Space Marines, Necrons, Custodians and Grey Knights, and I'm currently working on the early stages of a World Eaters army. With all of those, I've tended to build quite balanced lists, a bit of everything, so that I can try and tackle whatever my opponent throws at me, and that's worked pretty well. However, we're getting some big changes to the way we structure armies in 10th edition. Outside of Warlords, we can field almost whatever we want with a restriction of 3 of any one datasheet unless it's battle line, in which case you can have up to 6. Obviously, we'll need to see which units are better at scoring objectives and winning points in the game, but this new approach has encouraged me to try some more acute army lists, where I pick the units I love most or which create a nice theme or story and just go with those. For example, with Lionel Johnson's interesting new Deep Strike ability, I might just take an army made up of purely Deathwing Terminators, nothing else. It's not necessarily balanced, but it's fun, and the new army building structure means I can really experiment while trying a list that seems pretty cool thematically. You might have your own ideas already, but I think Games Workshop want us to play around more with 10th edition. Of course, part of that is because it helps them to sell more models, but the main thing is that we're playing with lists we enjoy creating, and it's worth thinking about that as more information on the new rules comes out. Another consideration is that the way the rules are packaged is changing. The core rules, as with 9th edition, will be free, but so will the initial datasheets for each faction. You'll have a choice between downloading them and or buying special datasheet cards like the War Scrolls in Age of Sigmar. Personally, I prefer to get away from my phone and digital devices when I'm playing Warhammer because I get easily distracted otherwise. But even if you're not like me, you might want to think about what your preferred format is, datasheet cards or digital downloads. It's still worth bearing in mind that codexes are being released as part of 10th edition, and personally, I think this is where we'll see sub-faction rules and stratagems being shared. We probably won't get everything on day one, so you might still find yourself buying physical codexes down the line. Either way, all of that is worth considering when you're setting aside budgets and thinking about what accessories you might want to help play the game your way. Of course, the elephant in the room is the retirement of the 9th edition codexes. Full transparency, I own every 9th edition codex, so take it from someone who has spent hundreds of pounds on those books when I say that I'm annoyed, but in a grateful way. 9th edition needed change, and that change isn't really possible unless GW did a massive reset like what they are doing with 10th ed, and the codexes have to bear the brunt of that. If anything, it shows the limitations of codexes. They fall apart with any major errors or changes. Just look at what happened during the launch of the Votann one. But all that said, while we're thinking about the armies we might want to try or the way we want to play the game, it's also worth thinking about spring cleaning and picking up some bargains while we're at it. The news of 10th edition has and will cause players to rethink plans and start selling codexes and models on sites like eBay, and it's a good idea if you're not particularly attached to the lore in the current codexes or an army you haven't played much in 9th. I've just listed an Imperial Fist army I've not even finished building, and that money is going straight into the budget for a new Dark Angels army. Admittedly, you might not get much for your codexes, but it's up to you whether you feel it's worth cashing out at this stage. On a different note, this is why I typically buy my codexes and models from independent retailers, because getting 20% off in most cases means I retain more value if I decide to sell them on later. Of course, where someone is selling, another is buying, and if you've already settled on an idea for an army and have a unit you need to buy, you may just be able to grab it second hand, meaning you save even more money and can get a head start on painting it up, but we'll come back to that later. The main thing to ask yourself is, what do you actually want to keep through to 10th edition? By all means, keep the things you're unsure about, but consider selling what you know you don't want and banking that cash for new projects. Shifting gears slightly, one of the things I really like about new editions of Warhammer is how easy it is to have conversations with often complete strangers in my local clubs or games workshop. That's because we're all in the same boat at that point. We're learning about the new rules and edition and thinking about new projects. In essence, it resets the playing field and removes a lot of the anxiety I feel when I talk to people who clearly know the game more than I do. So with that in mind, I always make a point to try and discover a new gaming club or hobby night for me to meet new people and just enjoy that sense of discovery. It might be a new club or even just talking to a new crowd or checking out an online forum. It's not about where or who, as it is so much about using a new edition to step out of my comfort zone and discover new communities. That might be something you're interested in trying, and these next few months are the best time for that. Maybe like me, you're ready to put aside 9th edition and just wait for the new one, and that makes it even easier to check out new clubs and chat to people you meet there. The other reason I suggest this is because once the game is out, we're all going to be discovering new things, and it could be a lot easier to do that and learn the game when you've got people in the same situation. So for me, I know I've got a few small games waiting for me later this summer, and we can just hash out the rules and get a lot of our mistakes out of the way early. Another part of that though might be to consider bringing a friend into the hobby. We know the Warhammer 40k starter set is going to pair Tyranids with Space Marines, and there's going to be some great new models in there. So whether you want to split the set and the cost and get gaming with a friend straight away, or you simply want to split the armies and each take it to a local gaming club, it's a great way to share that new edition experience while making the most of the new models and your budget. Alternatively, we've just had a wave of new combat patrol sets which are somewhat separate from 10th edition in so much that you're meant to just pick up a set, that's your army, and you fight forces from other combat patrol boxes using a more simplified rule set. That makes it another great way to get into the game and pair up with someone else to learn the new rules without spending tons of money or time worrying about army lists. And of course, I can't talk about new models without mentioning the pile of shame. For those of you who don't know, Warhammer fans can often build a pretty big pile of box models that are waiting to be worked on, and we've all got them, there's no real shame in that. But as I said earlier, I want my first few weeks and months of 10th edition to be about playing the game, learning the rules and hanging out with friends at the same time. That means I'm not going to be able to work on many new models, so over the coming weeks and months I'll be focusing almost solely on clearing the backlog and getting as much of my new projects completed as I can. Naturally, if I'm planning a new Dark Angels Terminator list, I'll be working on those new Terminators when they come out at launch, but I've got a ton of Necrons, Custodes and even Age of Sigmar models to paint up. I'm never going to have a better time to do that than between editions when I feel like I'm not missing out on games of 40k. And it doesn't stop me heading to my local club to see people and share those ideas when I have a night free. Alternatively, if you're the one person who has all their models sorted, or more likely you're in less of a rush, then it can also be a great time to try some other games. You've got spin-offs of 40k like Aeronautica and Kill Team, or maybe you want to jump into Age of Sigmar or Warcry. It's entirely up to you, but I don't want to paint this time as just for pre-10th edition admin. It's about getting excited for the new edition and having fun in the meantime, and there's more than one way and more than one game to do that. So those are just a few suggestions for getting ready for 10th edition Warhammer 40k. Again, it's all about personal preference. Some will want to play as many games as they can, while others will want to lean back and focus on other things. Whatever your decision, I hope it leads to some exciting ideas and projects for the years ahead, and let me know what they are in the comment section. As always, I want to say thank you for joining me today. Please click the like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you want to join me for future Warhammer videos, and I hope to see you in my next one. Until then though, take care.